Hi guys. Tonight we're heading into the mountains, where the air burns your lungs and snow swallows the sound of your own breath. You're standing on a ridge somewhere in the early 1800s, wrapped in animal hides that reek of smoke and sweat. The wind doesn't howl so much as it whispers threats. It's beautiful, yes, but also merciless. The kind of place where one wrong step could mean a frozen grave. You probably wouldn't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights and picture yourself trudging into the cold breath of the frontier. Your boots sink deep into fresh snow, each step cracking through a crust that formed overnight. The mountains around you are white and endless, the trees heavy with frost. The sun, pale and distant, feels more decorative than useful. You can almost taste the cold, metallic and dry on your tongue. In this world, warmth isn't comfort, it's survival. Every spark of fire, every sip of heat, every mouthful of food decides whether you'll see spring again. The mountain men who roamed these wild ranges knew this truth better than anyone. They were fur trappers, traders, wanderers. Some were ex-soldiers, others escaped debts or disappointment back east. They hunted beaver for pelts, traded with indigenous nations, and mapped the wild edges of North America before it had borders. But history often forgets the daily struggle, the empty stomach, the trembling hands trying to start a fire in a blizzard. When supplies ran low, the question wasn't, "What do I want for dinner?" It was, "What can I possibly eat to stay alive?" You can almost hear the crunch of frozen leather as they shift beside a campfire, smoke curling into the dim twilight. Their breath hangs in the air, turning each exhale into a ghost. There's the faint smell of singed hair, animal fat, and wet fur drying too close to the flames. One man pokes at a pot hanging from a crooked branch, something thick and grey bubbling inside. It's not stew as you'd imagine it. It's whatever they managed to catch or scrape from the world around them. The first winter always hit hardest. Traders from Street Lewis or Street Paul would bring barrels of salt, pork, flour, beans, coffee, and sugar to the rendezvous camps in the summer. But once the rivers froze and the passes closed, no new supplies could reach them. The mountains sealed themselves off like a fortress, and the men inside had to live on what they'd stored or hunted. Many misjudged just how much that was. Historians estimate that a single mountain man could burn more than 4,000 calories a day hauling traps through snow and chopping wood just to stay alive. Yet their provisions, meant to last months, often vanished in weeks. A mainstream fact, records from the Hudson's Bay Company mention trappers reducing rations to less than a handful of flour per day during the worst storms. That's barely enough to keep the body from turning on itself. And still, life went on. The quirky truth is that some trappers swore by chewing on spruce needles for energy. They said it cleared the mind and eased hunger pangs. Maybe it was the vitamin C, maybe just the illusion of doing something. Either way, you can imagine the taste: sharp, green, resinous, the kind of flavor that sticks in your teeth and makes your tongue tingle. There's a debate among historians about how many mountain men truly lived in isolation through winter. Some suggest they spent more time near indigenous villages than legend admits, trading or relying on hospitality. Others argue that the loner myth is closer to truth, that most trappers survived in small, stubborn camps miles from anyone else. Either way, the silence of those winters was immense. The world outside the campfire was a frozen void, filled with the groan of trees splitting under frost. You crouch by that imaginary fire now, feeling the warmth lick at your numb fingers. The hunger is already there, sitting like a stone in your belly. The cold makes you burn through what little strength you have left. In the distance, wolves call high, haunting notes that carry over the valley. You pull your blanket tighter and think about what you have to eat. A few strips of jerky, some beans maybe, coffee grounds at the bottom of a tin, and snow. endless snow to melt for water. The smell of smoke clings to everything. The fire spits as sap bubbles in the wood. Above you, stars shimmer through gaps in the clouds, impossibly sharp in the cold air. There's a peace in it, strange as that sounds. Maybe that's what drew the mountain men here, not comfort, but a kind of quiet truth. Everything unnecessary burned away. Just you, the cold, and the question of what comes next. You start to doze, chin dropping toward your chest, lulled by the pop of the fire. Your stomach growls, dragging you back to wakefulness. Out there in history, someone like you is chewing on frozen meat or sipping hot broth made from bones cracked open for marrow. And you realize, as you picture their faces glowing in the firelight, that survival wasn't just about strength. It was about ingenuity, endurance, and the stubborn refusal to quit even when the world froze solid around you. Tomorrow, they'll break ice from the river to wash their hands, strap on snowshoes, and check traps that might hold the difference between life and starvation. But for now, they sit in that delicate moment between exhaustion and hope, warmed by a few embers and a faith that spring will come again. The first flakes fall soft, almost gentle, but you already know how quickly that changes. Within hours, the wind turns cruel, cutting sideways through the pines. You hunch your shoulders and pull your coat tighter, the fur stiff with frost. Each breath feels like swallowing needles. The trading post you left weeks ago is now buried under snowdrifts that reach the eaves. You remember how the shelves looked before you set out, stacked with sacks of flour, sugar, and beans. Now, in the middle of nowhere, those comforts feel like dreams fading behind a curtain of white. By December, the mountain passes are closed. The narrow trails that once led to civilization are gone under snow. You are alone with a few other men, your supplies running thin. The rations that once seemed endless have dwindled to crumbs. Flour, that soft powder of luxury, has become something you weigh by the pinch. Coffee grounds are reused, boiled again and again until the water turns pale grey and bitter. Even salt feels precious, scraped from the edges of old bags and sprinkled like gold dust. It is here, in this isolation, that you understand why trading posts were the heartbeat of survival. They were more than places to barter beaver pelts for supplies. They were a lifeline. When the rivers froze and the snow swallowed the paths, all trade stopped. And with that, the thin thread connecting you to the world snapped. The hunger begins to whisper louder. You sit near the fire with two companions. The air smells of smoke, leather, and something faintly rancid. A kettle hangs above the flames, the steam rising lazily. Inside, a handful of beans float in cloudy water. Someone stirs it with the handle of a knife, scraping the bottom for flavor. You can almost taste the desperation in the air. The mountain men called this the lean time, when even the toughest grew gaunt. A known historical fact is that the American Fur Company once documented rationing to 3 ounces of flour and a few beans per day during harsh winters. It was enough to keep men breathing, but not living. Their diaries speak of dizziness, of trembling hands, of daydreams filled with loaves of bread and dripping roasts. You can imagine those dreams now, glowing behind your eyelids like cruel mirages. A fringe truth floats through old camp stories. Some trappers swore that chewing tobacco soothed hunger pains, tricking the stomach into calm. Others gnawed on bark or pine sap, pretending it was candy. It sounds absurd, but in the stillness of endless snow, the mind clings to any illusion of control. Historians still argue whether the trading companies underestimated the winters or simply gambled on the men's endurance. Some say they shipped too few supplies to save money, assuming hunters could live off the land. Others believe it was arrogance, a failure to respect the wilderness. Whatever the reason, many men paid for that miscalculation with frostbitten fingers and hollow cheeks. You picture yourself rummaging through a half-empty cache, fingers numb, pulling out a handful of dried beans and a small sack of coffee. The beans rattle like bones in your palm. You weigh whether to eat them now or save them for later. Hunger is a constant companion, whispering in your ear that later might never come. You glance toward the horizon, where the sun is nothing more than a smudge of grey. Inside your small shelter, frost forms delicate lace on the walls. Your breath fogs before your eyes. The fire's glow feels weaker tonight. The others speak in low tones, their voices rough from the cold. You can smell the smoke in their hair, the sour scent of unwashed wool. No one wants to admit how hungry they are. You all pretend the pot of beans will be enough. At night you lie wrapped in blankets stiff with ice. Your stomach knots, gurgling softly like a warning drum. Sleep comes in short bursts. You dream of the trading post, of coffee steaming in tin mugs, of biscuits warm from the pan. The memory hurts more than the hunger itself. In the morning, you find the beans have frozen solid. You pry them apart with a knife and drop them into boiling water, waiting for them to soften. The first sip burns your tongue, but you don't care. It tastes of smoke, metal, and hope. A single swallow feels like a victory. There's a faint comfort in routine. Every day you rise, stoke the fire, and count your dwindling supplies. The small rituals keep you sane. You rub frost from your beard and listen to the wind moan through the trees. Somewhere in the distance a raven calls. You wonder if it watches you from above, patient and knowing, waiting to see who survives. That night, as the fire crackles, you remember the sound of laughter at the trading post before the snows came, the smell of tobacco and whiskey, the shimmer of lantern light on frost-covered windows. You remember men boasting of how they could live off the land with ease. Now, in this silence, those words feel like a cruel joke. But you also feel something stirring inside you, a strange defiance. You're still here, still breathing, still fighting the cold. The mountain may be merciless, but so are you. Tomorrow you'll try again, search the traps, melt more snow, scrape the pot clean. Survival has a rhythm, a heartbeat that matches the crack of ice and the sigh of the wind. You cling to it, even as the world around you freezes. The night cracks open with the sound of the wind, and your stomach answers with its own groan. The beans are gone. The little flour you had left has turned to dust in the bottom of the bag. Tonight, you dream of food that actually has texture, something you can sink your teeth into. When morning comes, the camp smells faintly of smoke and wet fur, and you know what the day's work will be, making jerky, scraping dried meat into something that might last through the next storm. You walk down toward the frozen stream, breath puffing in small clouds. The meat hanging from your pack is stiff as wood, salted weeks ago and left near the fire to dry. Jerky is not comfort food. It is endurance made edible. You tear off a piece and chew until your jaw aches. It tastes like salt, smoke, and memories of warmth, but it keeps you alive. According to period journals, some trappers prepared their jerky from beaver tail, which they boiled first to loosen the skin, then dried in thin sheets over open flames. It wasn't pleasant, but it was reliable. The protein and fat stored in those strips meant survival. Even when frost gathered on the inside of their tents, men gnawed those leathery slices like animals guarding their last meal. An odd little note from the archives says that some of them kept pieces of jerky tucked inside their shirts, close to their skin, to soften it before chewing. Imagine that warmth mingling with the scent of smoke and sweat, transforming a hard, tasteless slab into something just chewable enough. It sounds crude, but when the snow presses in for weeks at a time, you'll do anything to make a meal feel human again. You sit by the fire, staring into the flames as the smoke curls upward. The light catches the edges of your face. The reflection of the past shimmering in orange and gold. You take another bite of jerky, each pull of your jaw reminding you how fragile comfort is. Someone mutters beside you about biscuits, about the memory of soft bread made from flour and salt. You remember them too, those thick discs known as hardtack. Hardtack was the universal traveller's bread, simple and nearly immortal. Made from flour, water, and sometimes salt, it was baked until it could shatter teeth. The good part was that it didn't spoil. The bad part was everything else. You soften it in whatever liquid you can spare, broth, water, even coffee if you're desperate. When you bite down, it crumbles into powder, sticking to your tongue. It's not delicious, but it fills the hollow. Some historians question if mountain men truly ate as much hardtack as army records suggest. After all, it was heavy to carry and nearly impossible to bake without an oven. Others think they made improvised versions, flour fried on hot stones or cooked on a skillet in bear grease. Whatever form it took, it symbolized survival more than satisfaction. The simple act of chewing meant you had something, and something was enough. You imagine the rhythm of camp life, waking to frozen boots, cutting meat into thin strips, tending a slow fire. The air smells of wood smoke and rendered fat. There's a peace to it, in its own way. Every action serves a purpose. Nothing is wasted. Not time, not energy, not even the scraps. The mountain doesn't allow waste. In the evenings, you and the others share silence more than stories. The only conversation is the hiss of burning logs and the crack of the jerky between your teeth. The stars shimmer above, and the world feels both infinite and claustrophobic. You chew slowly, not out of patience, but because your body demands it. Your jaw moves as though it remembers what feasts once felt like. You picture a man sitting 100 miles away, maybe by another fire, doing the same thing. Different mountain, same hunger. The thought comforts you. You're not alone in your misery. This land has always demanded the same price from everyone who dares to stay through winter. A few men keep their humor alive by naming their rations. One calls his last biscuit hope. Another roasts a scrap of meat and declares it Thanksgiving. The laughter that follows is thin but real. It's enough to keep the dark from swallowing you whole. Later that night, you rest your back against a log, the sky stretching endless above you. The cold seeps in from every side, but your belly is just full enough to make the world quiet again. The jerky sits heavy but comforting, and you understand why those early trappers called it meat that walks. It carried them through mountains, storms, and hunger, a simple thing that refused to die. The wind softens for a moment, brushing across your face like a whisper. You close your eyes and picture the smell of warm bread. It's a cruel trick, but it makes you smile. Tomorrow there will be more snow, more chewing, more quiet endurance. And somehow, that feels like enough. The fire crackles low, its light stretching shadows across the snow like ribbons of gold. You crouch beside it, holding a chunk of fat in your gloved hand. It feels slick and heavy, almost alive, a small treasure of energy in a world made of ice. Out here, fat is not waste. It is wealth. It is warmth. When food runs low, the men who know how to render animal fat hold the secret of survival itself. You cut the fat into pieces and drop them into an iron pot. They hiss and sputter as the heat takes hold, and soon the air fills with a deep, greasy smell. The snow outside glows faintly under the moon, and the scent of hot tallow cuts through the cold like music. You stir slowly, watching the fat melt into clear liquid. The smell clings to your clothes, your hair, even the inside of your nose. Records from the era reveal that trappers prized rendered fat as both food and utility. Once cooled, it hardened into white blocks that could be used as butter, as fuel for lamps, or even as makeshift candles. A spoonful of tallow could give more strength than a slice of dried meat. Fat was energy you could taste, a promise that your body would keep burning through another night. Curiously enough, some men swore that eating tallow directly kept them warmer, as if the fat itself turned to heat inside their veins. Others rubbed it on their faces to prevent frostbite, a practice that made them shine like oiled statues in the dim light. It sounds strange, but when the temperature drops below freezing for weeks, you will believe in anything that might save your skin. Experts continue to dispute how common these habits were. Some argue that mountain men learned such uses from indigenous peoples, who had perfected fat preservation long before trappers arrived. Others believe the idea spread from European sailors who survived long sea voyages on salted pork fat and hardtack. Either way, the act of rendering fat became ritual, a rhythm of necessity repeated across 1,000 camps. You stir the pot until the pieces shrink and hiss, then strain the clear liquid through a scrap of cloth. The result gleams pale in the flickering firelight. You pour it into a tin, where it cools to solid white. You dip your finger in, taste it, and wince. It is bland and greasy, but it fills you with warmth that spreads from your throat to your chest. You feel alive again, in a quiet, stubborn way. Outside, the night thickens. The fire hums low, and the stars feel close enough to touch. You remember the first time you tried to cook over an open flame, when your meal turned black and bitter. Now, every movement is careful, deliberate. You pour a little of the fat onto a strip of leather to make it pliable, another drop onto a rag to polish your rifle. Nothing is wasted. Somewhere behind you, a wolf howls, long and hollow. You glance toward the sound, your hand tightening on the knife at your belt. The fire pops and spits, scattering sparks into the darkness. You toss a few sticks on and watch the flames climb higher, chasing back the shadows. One of the men nearby mumbles a story about a trapper who once ate a candle made of tallow during a blizzard. You laugh softly, though you know it is not a joke. In desperate times, a candle is just another form of food. The wax burns hot in your stomach, but it keeps the fire inside you alive. As the hours drag on, you feel the fatigue of cold settle into your bones. You rub a dab of fat on your fingertips and work it into the cracks of your skin. The warmth is faint but real. The smell reminds you of the hunt, of the creature that gave this gift of survival. Out here, nothing dies without purpose. The wind rattles the tent flap, and a fine dust of snow slips in through the seams. You pull your coat tighter and stretch out beside the fire. The tin of tallow cools beside you, gleaming softly in the light. You think about how strange it is that something so unappealing could be so vital. There is no luxury here, only what keeps you breathing. Tomorrow the pot will go back on the fire. You'll melt more fat, scrape more bones, and let the smell settle into everything you own. It's a rhythm that has kept men alive for centuries. The act is both simple and sacred. Heat, patience, and the will to endure. You close your eyes and listen to the soft hum of the flames, the whisper of wind, and the sound of your own breath steadying in the dark. Morning comes slowly, a dull grey light creeping through the tent walls. You wake to the sound of someone stirring a pot near the fire. The smell is heavy, oily, and strangely sweet. It is not coffee, not soup, not anything that resembles comfort. It is pemmican. You sit up, rubbing your eyes, and look at the mixture bubbling in the pot. Dried meat, crushed berries, and rendered fat blend together into something dense and unlovely. It is not a meal meant for pleasure. It is a tool for survival. The texture is strange, the color darker than earth, and the smell clings to your clothes. You dip a finger in and taste it. It is rich, smoky, faintly sweet, and undeniably alive. Historical logs make it clear that pemmican was the lifeblood of winter expeditions. It came from the ingenuity of the indigenous peoples of the plains, who learned to preserve energy in its most efficient form. Trappers quickly adopted it because it lasted for months, even through freezing temperatures. A single pound could fuel a man through an entire day of hunting or trapping. It was the original survival food, long before anyone thought to call it that. A lesser-known custom among trappers was to make different batches for different moods. Some mixed choke cherries for a tart edge, others used buffalo fat to add weight. A few sprinkled in wild onions or even pepper, when they had it, to remind themselves that food could still taste like something. It was not just fuel, it was a fragile link to memory, a reminder that eating could still mean feeling human. Opinions differ among historians regarding how closely mountain men followed indigenous recipes. Some researchers claim the trappers never learned the exact balance of ingredients, making their versions more crude and prone to spoilage. Others insist they mastered the method, creating something nearly identical to the original. What is certain is that pemmican became as essential as a rifle or a blanket. Without it, many would not have survived the season. You sit with your tin of pemmican beside the fire. The others do the same, cutting small squares and eating slowly. It does not look like much, but the warmth that spreads through your body after a few bites feels miraculous. The fat melts on your tongue, leaving a waxy coating. The berries cut through the heaviness, adding a burst of sour that wakes you from the fog of cold. Outside, the snow drifts lazily down, thick as feathers. The silence of it feels almost holy. You chew slowly, your jaw tired but steady. Around you, the forest holds its breath. Every sound feels magnified, the crunch of snow under boots, the soft murmur of the fire, the quiet sigh of the wind against canvas. The world has shrunk to a circle of warmth and light, and this strange mixture of fat and fruit holds it all together. Someone jokes that pemmican is the mountain man's miracle, a food that can outlast its maker. You laugh, because it is true. You could pack it in a leather pouch, forget it for months, and find it unchanged. Even in the damp chill, it stays solid, waiting for the moment when hunger strikes. As the day stretches on, you take turns melting snow for water, sharpening knives, and mending torn gear. The rhythm feels steady now, almost calm. There is comfort in having something to eat, even if it is just this heavy, sticky block of nourishment. You lick your fingers and taste the salt and smoke again. The flavor lingers long after the last bite. In the evening, the camp grows quiet. The fire burns low, and the men lean back against their packs, tired but content. You pull the blanket closer around your shoulders and look up at the stars. They shimmer through the cold air, distant and untouchable. Somewhere beyond them lies a world where meals come hot and easy. But tonight, this is enough. Your stomach feels full for the first time in days. The air smells faintly of smoke and berries. The firelight paints everything gold and amber, and for a fleeting moment, the mountain seems almost kind. You realize that survival is not about fighting the wilderness, but learning its rhythm, understanding that even the harshest places hold gifts for those who know how to listen. Tomorrow, you will pack the remaining pemmican into small bundles, wrap them in hide, and hang them high from a tree to keep them safe from wolves. It will be your insurance, your proof that you can face another day. You close your eyes, the taste of fat and fruit still on your tongue, and drift towards sleep while the fire hums softly beside you. The cold sharpens by morning, and the snow lies deep enough to swallow your boots. You wake to the sound of wind scraping across the frozen plains like a knife on bone. The fire is almost out, a faint orange glow barely clinging to life beneath grey ash. Your breath curls into the air in pale ribbons as you sit up and stretch your aching limbs. Hunger wakes before you do, pressing in from the hollow space under your ribs. You glance at the small pile of supplies. The pemmican is gone. The beans are gone. The jerky long since devoured. What's left are odds and ends. A bit of coffee, a torn scrap of leather, and the uneasy silence of men too weak to argue. There is no more meat to hunt. The traps are empty, and the snow has buried the snares. The only thing left is desperation. Eyewitness diaries describe how mountain men, when faced with starvation, turned to their own gear for sustenance. Leather boots, belts, and even rifle slings became food. The process was simple but grim. Boil the leather for hours until it softened enough to chew. It was not about taste or pleasure, it was about survival. An old trapper's tale insists that one man claimed he preferred boiled moccasins to rawhide strips because they had more seasoning. You can almost imagine the grim laughter around that fire, the smell of wet leather and smoke, the sight of men tearing at what was once their clothing. It is a vision that tests the limits of endurance. Researchers remain divided on how often this truly happened. Some say it was a rarity, a myth exaggerated by later storytellers. Others point to repeated references in journals, letters, and military records as proof that it was common enough to be remembered. The truth, as always, hides somewhere between legend and necessity. You find yourself staring at your own boots, feeling the cracked edges of the leather. The thought makes your stomach twist. But when the hunger grows sharper than disgust, you will do what you must. You strip off the laces, cut the tongue from the boot, and drop it into the pot with a bit of melted snow. The smell that rises is awful. Wet hide, smoke, and something faintly sour. You stir slowly, trying not to think about what you are doing. Hours later, the leather softens into something halfway between rubber and meat. You take a piece out, bite down, and feel it resist your teeth. It has no flavor except the bitter taste of smoke. You chew until your jaw aches, swallow, and feel it sit heavy in your stomach. It is not satisfying, but it is something. The others follow your example. No one speaks while they eat. The only sounds are the wind outside and the dull chewing of men who have forgotten the meaning of comfort. The fire crackles quietly, and a few sparks drift upward, lost to the dark. The cold tightens its grip as night falls. You sit close to the flames, feeding in sticks one by one. The heat bites at your face, and your back remains frozen. There's a strange peace in the monotony of it. You exist only in this moment, one breath at a time. Hunger, fatigue, cold, these are the only realities left. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you remember hearing about explorers who boiled candles or scraped the glue from wooden crates to survive. You understand them now. The body will take what it can get, and pride has no place in the wilderness. You look at your boots again and wonder how long until they are gone entirely. As the fire burns lower, you think of the things that truly keep you alive out here. Stubbornness, resourcefulness, and a strange sense of humor. Without them, the mind would freeze faster than the flesh. You whisper a joke about leather soup, and one of the men chuckles softly. The sound feels human, almost gentle. The night grows deeper, the stars sharp against the black sky. You lie back, your stomach uneasy but no longer empty. The fire flickers against your face, and you think of how thin the line between survival and surrender can be. Somewhere far below the snow, the earth still breathes warmth. Somewhere, spring waits. But for now, you rest beside the fire, the taste of boiled leather still clinging faintly to your tongue, and you let sleep take you in slow, trembling waves. Morning light filters weakly through the trees, the kind that gives no warmth, only color. You stretch beneath a stiff blanket, your breath forming small clouds. The cold gnaws at your fingertips, but hunger still hurts more. Today, you will try something different. You will look beneath the snow. You step outside, boots crunching over the icy crust. The forest seems asleep, the branches glazed in white. The air smells faintly of pine and smoke. You move slowly, your breath shallow, eyes scanning the ground for signs of life. There are no berries left, no animals stirring, but below the snow, hidden under the earth, roots wait. According to company journals, trappers who survived the hardest winters learned this trick from indigenous guides. Certain tubers and wild onions, buried deep enough to escape frost, could still be found if you knew where to dig. They called them prairie turnips or biscuit roots, small knobby things with a sweet earthy taste when roasted. To find one was a blessing. A peculiar trick some swore by involved watching for old animal trails. The snow there packed thinner, and digging took less effort. Others poked the ground with the tips of their rifles, listening for the soft give of buried life. It sounds absurd, but when your belly aches and your fingers tremble, you learn to listen for what the earth hides. There's ongoing debate about whether most trappers could truly identify edible roots safely. Some records suggest many died from eating the wrong kind: poison hemlock mistaken for wild carrot, water hemlock for parsnip. Others claim that with practice, even the most rugged loner learned enough to survive by instinct. Whatever the truth, the act of digging for roots became a silent ritual of hope. You kneel in the snow, scraping with a dull knife until the ground shows through. The frozen soil gives reluctantly, breaking apart in clumps. After an hour of searching, you find a small tuber the size of your thumb. It smells faintly sweet, like damp wood. You brush it off and hold it to the light. It feels fragile, precious. You bite into it raw, grimacing at the bitterness, then hold it near the fire until it softens. The taste improves slightly, still sharp, but edible. As you eat, your stomach clenches with both relief and protest. It's not much, but it's real food. You close your eyes and let the warmth of the fire mingle with the scent of earth and pine. For a moment, you could almost believe you've found something sacred in the soil. Later, you and the others move quietly, searching along the riverbank. The snow muffles every sound. The world feels fragile, suspended between silence and survival. You notice small clues, a tuft of grass, a dry stem poking through the snow. You dig again and again, gathering handfuls of small, pale roots. Each one feels like a victory. By evening, you have enough to roast. You skewer them on sticks and hold them over the flames. The roots blister and darken, releasing a faintly sweet aroma. You chew slowly, feeling the fibers break apart in your mouth. It isn't filling, but it soothes the sharp edge of hunger. The others eat in silence, their faces lit orange by the fire. Some of the roots taste sour, others almost floral. You wonder how many generations of people learned this knowledge through trial and error. The thought humbles you. The mountain does not forgive mistakes, but it rewards patience. Night settles again, heavy and still. You sit near the fire, hands extended toward the warmth. The taste of earth lingers on your tongue. You think of the unseen life beneath the frozen surface, how it endures through darkness, waiting for spring. There is comfort in that idea. You realize that survival here isn't about defying the mountain, it's about listening to it. The fire crackles softly. Snow falls through the branches above, silent and steady. You close your eyes, full enough to rest, warmed by the smallest meal and the quiet truth that you are still alive. The wind quiets overnight, and by morning the air feels thick with cold. The sky glows a muted silver, the kind that promises more snow. You walk toward the river, boots creaking on the frozen surface. Beneath the layer of ice, the faint sound of moving water hums like a heartbeat. Hunger has returned, deep and steady. You have eaten roots and scraps, and your body aches for something richer, something alive. Today, you will try for fish. You kneel beside the riverbank, brush away the powdery snow, and tap the ice with the butt of your knife. The sound rings sharp and clean. It will take hours to break through, but you do not care. The thought of fresh meat, something that might flake under your fingers, fills you with quiet determination. You start hacking at the ice, each strike echoing through the still forest. According to period journals, winter fishing was often the difference between life and death. Mountain men used whatever tools they had, hunting knives, chisels, or even musket barrels to cut holes in the frozen rivers. Once through, they lowered bone hooks or bent pins tied to sinew, baited with scraps of meat or bits of cloth. Patience mattered more than luck. An odd little note from a trader's log says that some men swore by using bright beads or buttons to lure fish beneath the ice. They believed the glint reminded trout of insects trapped in the current. Whether superstition or wisdom, no one could deny that a single fish meant a night of warmth and strength. Some modern researchers doubt how much fishing really occurred during the worst months. They argue that freezing temperatures made it nearly impossible to stay long enough beside open water without frostbite. Others believe it was common practice, citing repeated mentions in journals of frozen hands and faces earned while waiting for the line to move. Either way, the image endures. A man crouched over an ice hole, alone with his hope. You chip away at the last bit of ice, and suddenly the surface gives. Cold water seeps upward, black and clear. You lean closer, feeling the bite of air against your cheeks. The hole steams faintly where it meets the warmth of your breath. You lower a line, a crude hook tied to a strip of leather. The current tugs gently. You wait. Minutes blur into hours. The sound of cracking ice becomes a rhythm, a kind of meditation. Around you, the forest remains silent except for the occasional snap of a branch under snow. Your thoughts drift to home, to warmth, to the smell of real food. Then you feel it. A faint pull. You freeze, breath caught in your throat. The line twitches again. You jerk your hand upward and feel resistance. The line trembles, and water splashes up cold against your wrist. You pull harder, and the shape breaks through the surface a trout, silver and blue, its body twisting in the light. You laugh out loud, the sound startling in the stillness. For the first time in days, you hold life in your hands. You clean the fish quickly with a knife, your fingers numb but steady. The flesh glistens, pale pink against the snow. You lay it across a stick near the fire, watching the skin blister and curl. The smell rises instantly rich, smoky, almost sweet. You can taste it before you even touch it. When you finally take a bite, the warmth floods your body. The texture is soft, the flavor delicate and wild. You chew slowly, savoring every moment. Around you, the others smile faintly, eyes half closed as they eat their share. No one speaks. There is reverence in this meal. The fire hisses as melted snow drips into it. The scent of fish and wood smoke lingers long after the bones are picked clean. You lean back against a log, full for the first time in what feels like forever. The warmth of the food seeps deep, loosening the tightness in your chest. As darkness falls, the river hums softly behind you, the sound muffled by snow. You close your eyes and listen. That steady flow beneath the ice reminds you that even in the hardest winter, life continues somewhere unseen. It moves patiently, waiting to be found by those willing to look. The stars emerge, sharp and cold. The campfire burns low, its last sparks drifting into the night. You pull your blanket tighter and let the rhythm of the river lull you towards sleep. The taste of trout still faint on your tongue, the promise of survival whispering through the wind. The forest wakes in silence, wrapped in fog so thick you can barely see the treetops. The cold has softened, just enough to make the snow heavy under your boots. You rise stiffly from your bedroll, stretch your frozen limbs, and feel that familiar hunger stirring again. The fish from yesterday is long gone, and the warmth it brought has faded into memory. You know what must come next. It is time to hunt what you cannot see. You move slowly through the woods, eyes sharp for any sign of movement. Tracks, droppings, a bent twig all become clues. The rifle feels heavy in your hands, but you know bullets are too precious to waste. Trapping will have to do. You kneel in the snow beside a narrow path where small prints lead between the trees. The size tells you rabbit. You smile faintly. That means food. According to field accounts left by old trappers, snares were their lifeline during winter. With a bit of wire, rawhide, or sinew, they set loops along well-traveled trails. A single catch could mean a day's worth of nourishment, fur for warmth, and bones for tools. They often carried dozens of snares, checking them each morning like farmers tending crops. A peculiar detail buried in one diary mentions a trapper who swore by rubbing his traps with pine needles to disguise his scent. He believed animals could smell human fear as easily as smoke. Whether true or not, you find yourself doing the same, running the cold green needles between your palms until the sharp scent fills the air. Some historians question if mountain men truly depended so heavily on trapping. A few argue that most of their food came from hunting large game when possible, while traps were only a desperate measure. Others insist the opposite, pointing to endless references to snares in journals and supply lists. The truth may lie in between traps, provided hope on days when rifles stayed silent. You kneel again, set the loop, and sprinkle snow lightly over it. The action feels almost tender, as though you are laying a prayer in the earth. You move quietly through the woods, setting another, then another, until your hands ache from the cold. Each one becomes a small promise. The day drags on in dull grey light. You return to camp, fingers raw, and sit by the fire to thaw them. The others are busy repairing gear, tightening straps, boiling the last of the coffee grounds. The smell is bitter but comforting. You stare into the flames and wonder what the traps will hold by morning. When dawn comes again, you walk back through the forest. The air is crisp and silent. Frost hangs like glitter in the branches. As you near the first snare, your breath catches. The snow is disturbed, the loop pulled tight. A small shape lies still beside it. You kneel and touch the fur, soft, white, perfect. A snowshoe hare. You whisper a quiet thank you before freeing the body. The meat is lean but clean, the kind that burns hot and fast in the belly. You carry it back to camp, pride and relief washing through you with every step. The others greet you with tired smiles. Together you skin the rabbit, careful to save every piece. The hide will line your gloves, the bones will flavor broth, the meat will feed you all. As it cooks, the smell fills the clearing, rich and wild. The fat crackles in the pot, and for a moment you forget the cold. You eat slowly, savoring each bite. It is not abundance, but it is life. That night, the forest feels less hostile. You sit by the fire, full enough to relax, and listen to the wind slide through the trees. The stars glimmer faintly above, soft points of light behind drifting clouds. You close your eyes and think of the traps you set, still waiting in the woods, silent and patient like the mountain itself. Somewhere in that darkness, another loop tightens. Another life is caught. You will find it in the morning, and the rhythm will continue. In this place, survival is not a single victory. It is a pattern of small mercies, repeated until spring. You lie back beside the fire, your hands still smelling faintly of pine and fir. The warmth of food settles deep in your belly, and exhaustion drapes over you like a second blanket. You listen to the forest breathe, to the faint rustle of snow sliding from branches, and you let the sound carry you gently towards sleep. The morning fog clings to the trees, thick enough to hide the rising sun. You wake to the soft hiss of the fire and the faint smell of smoke that never really leaves your clothes. It's a smell you know now as comfort, as home. You stretch slowly, feeling the weight of another day ahead. The rabbit meat from yesterday is gone, leaving behind only bones, a few strips of sinew, and the lingering taste of salt. You will make those remnants count. You stir the ashes and feed in a few twigs. The flames catch, low and steady. The smoke curls upward, tracing lazy lines in the cold air. You toss a handful of bones into a pot of melting snow and let it simmer. The sound of boiling water feels almost like company. You add a pinch of salt, a scrap of dried root, and wait. According to accounts written by early fur traders, smoke and ash played a greater role in survival than most people realize. Fire was not only for warmth or cooking, it was preservation, seasoning, and defense. Everything that could be smoked was smoked meat, fish, even fat, soaked hides that might one day become food. The smoke kept the insects away, hardened the flesh, and stretched meager supplies into months. An old trapper's notebook describes how some men would deliberately hang their clothes above smoky fires, believing the scent of ash would ward off sickness. Others went further, rubbing soot into their skin to hide their smell from animals or ghosts, depending on who told the story. It sounds strange, yet there's something deeply human in the need to believe that smoke could cleanse, protect, and preserve. Scholars can't quite agree on how much of this was science and how much was superstition. Some argue that the constant smoke in those camps truly did drive away disease by keeping insects at bay. Others claim it was little more than ritual comfort in a world that offered none. Whatever the truth, The smell of smoke became part of the mountain man's identity, an invisible cloak that followed him wherever he went. You sit by the fire, stirring the pot. The smell of broth rises, sharp and earthy. You sip carefully. The liquid thin but warm. It tastes faintly of wood and ash, but you savor it anyway. The smoke burns your throat slightly, but that pain feels like proof of life. Later, you set strips of meat on thin branches near the fire, letting the smoke curl around them. The process takes patience. Too close and they burn, too far and they rot. The grey tendrils drift through the camp, catching in your hair and clothes. It is slow work but hypnotic. Each hour feels like a prayer whispered to the forest. When the sun finally pushes through the mist, you step back to admire your work. The meat has darkened, edges curling and glistening faintly. The smell is intoxicating, rich, smoky, primal. You take a small piece, chew, and close your eyes. It is tough, salty, and perfect. The flavor brings warmth to your chest, a memory of something alive now turned into endurance. That night, the fire burns brighter. The others gather closer, their faces soft with light. One man tells a story about a trapper who claimed he could tell how long someone had lived in the mountains just by how they smelled of smoke. The group laughs, and for a moment, the world feels almost civilized. The laughter fades into quiet conversation, and then into silence. You stare into the fire and watch the embers pulse like tiny hearts. The air tastes of ash. Your fingers are stained grey, your beard flecked with soot. You realize that the smoke has become part of you, seeping into your skin, into your memories. It connects you to every man who ever sat by a fire in this wilderness, hungry and hopeful. As you lie back beneath the stars, the world feels smaller, gentler. The fire hums softly, and your breath mingles with the rising smoke. You can almost believe that the smoke carries your thoughts upward, blending them with the endless night. The scent of ash and char still clings to your hands as your eyes drift closed, and you find a strange peace in knowing that this smell, this taste, this heat will outlast you. The wind shifts in the night, carrying with it a new scent, wood smoke mingled with something foreign and comforting. You wake before dawn, wrapped in your blanket, and notice faint flickers of light deeper in the forest. Another camp. The thought startles you. For weeks you've seen no one but your own small group, yet now the mountains whisper that you are not alone. You follow the glow carefully, boots crunching over the crusted snow. The fire ahead burns clean and bright, surrounded by figures moving slowly in the pale morning light. They are indigenous hunters, wrapped in furs, their faces calm and unreadable. You pause at the edge of the clearing until one of them nods in silent invitation. You step forward. The air smells richer here, heavy with meat, herbs, and wood resin. According to journals of fur traders from the 1822nd, many mountain men survived harsh winters only because of the generosity and skill of indigenous communities. These people understood the land in ways the newcomers could not. They knew which bark cured sickness, which roots were safe, which animals could still be hunted when everything else vanished. To share food in such a world was to share life itself. One of the hunters gestures toward a pot simmering above the fire. You crouch beside it, letting the steam rise into your face. The scent is deep and wild meat mixed with herbs you can't name, something floral yet strong. The man hands you a carved wooden bowl. You sip, and warmth floods through you like sunlight. A less-known story from an explorer's letter tells of trappers who learned to brew pine needle tea from their indigenous hosts. The tea was bright green and tart, packed with vitamin C, though no one knew the science of it then. They just knew it worked. You recognize the same taste in this bowl. The forest turned liquid, sharp and alive. Researchers remain divided on how freely these exchanges happened. Some argue that trappers and tribes lived in cautious cooperation, bound by trade and necessity. Others believe the relationships ran much deeper, built on shared respect and survival. In either case, both sides shaped the other. You feel it now. as you sit among strangers who somehow feel like family, eating the same food that kept them alive for generations. One of the hunters laughs softly, handing you a strip of dried meat coated with crushed berries. You chew it slowly, surprised by its sweetness. It reminds you of pemmican, but lighter, more fragrant. You think of how many recipes were passed quietly this way, over fires in the wilderness, through gestures instead of words. The hunters speak little, but their movements are graceful and sure. You watch how they tend the fire, always feeding it from the upwind side so the smoke drifts away from the camp. You see how they store their meat high in the trees, how they pack snow around food instead of salt. Each small act is a lesson. You realize how much you have yet to learn. After the meal, you help gather wood, moving through the snow with the others. The forest feels different now, alive, generous. You find yourself noticing small details you once ignored. The tracks of grouse under a pine, the faint scent of sap where a tree has been cut. Knowledge has texture, you think. You can feel it under your hands. As the day fades, one of the hunters offers you a small pouch made of deer hide. Inside are herbs, dried mint, wild sage, and something that smells faintly of smoke. He mimes steeping it in water, nodding toward your empty tin. You thank him quietly, unsure if your words carry the right meaning, but his smile tells you it's enough. That night, back at your own camp, you brew the mixture. The water turns a pale green and fills the air with an earthy scent. You sip it slowly, letting the warmth spread through you. It's more than a drink. It's connection, an invisible thread between you and the people who came before. The stars glimmer through a break in the clouds. You feel the mountain breathe around you, vast and ancient. In that moment, survival no longer feels lonely. It feels shared. The fire crackles softly, echoing the rhythm of the other camp somewhere beyond the trees, and you drift towards sleep with the taste of herbs on your tongue and gratitude in your chest. The days grow shorter, and even the fire seems to burn lower than before. The air is drier now, sharp enough to sting when you breathe. Your lips crack with every word, and your tongue feels heavy in your mouth. You begin to crave something you once took for granted: salt. It is strange how the smallest things become obsessions when everything else has been stripped away. You rummage through your supplies, shaking each bag, each pouch. The last few grains of salt fall like dust between your fingers. You taste them anyway, pressing them to your tongue and savoring the sting. It is almost nothing, but your body remembers it. Records from fur company inventories show that salt was one of the most valued supplies in every shipment heading west. It preserved meat, flavored food, and kept the body balanced. Without it, men weakened faster, their muscles aching, their minds growing foggy. It was more than taste, it was survival in crystalline form. A strange camp rumor circulated among the trappers that gunpowder could be used as a substitute. Desperate men supposedly mixed it with water or broth to imitate the taste of salt. You can imagine the grim laughter that followed, the half-belief that if it didn't kill you, it might make your stew taste like something. Some even scraped the ash from burned wood, hoping to find the minerals that their bodies craved. Academic circles still wrestle with the idea that such practices were common. Some researchers dismiss the story's exaggerations, while others believe the physical effects of salt deprivation were too serious to ignore. They argue that these strange methods, no matter how dangerous, were acts of sheer necessity. In a world where every bite of food mattered, a little danger was a small price to pay for flavor. You decide to try something safer. The ashes from the fire hold faint traces of minerals. You sift through them carefully, blowing away the lighter dust until you're left with the heavier grains. You sprinkle a pinch over your boiled meat. The taste is bitter, metallic, and sharp, but for the first time in days, your meal has flavor. You eat slowly, closing your eyes, letting the smoky tang sit on your tongue. It reminds you of the ocean, though you've never seen it, only heard stories of ships and salt air. You wonder how something as simple as taste could feel like a memory of civilization. Later that night, you sit close to the fire, thinking about the trade posts far away where barrels of salt sit stacked in corners, untouched. You picture men back east sprinkling it freely over steaming plates, never imagining how precious those white crystals become when the world freezes around you. Your companions joke half-heartedly about trading furs for salt instead of sugar next season. You all laugh, but underneath the humor lies a quiet promise. If you make it out, you'll never take the small things for granted again. The wind picks up, scattering embers across the snow. You stir the fire and watch the sparks fade into the darkness. Hunger you can live with, cold you can fight. But this craving, this ache for taste feels different. It's not just your body asking, it's your spirit remembering what it means to feel human. You reach into your pouch and take one last pinch of ash, letting it fall slowly into the pot. The water hisses, then stills. You breathe in the scent, faint and acrid, and take another sip. It burns a little, but you smile anyway. Out here, every strange solution becomes a story, every small victory a reason to keep going. As you lie down to sleep, the salt dream returns again. You imagine waves breaking on a distant shore, the taste of sea spray on your lips. For a moment, it feels close enough to touch, and you drift into the warmth of that thought as the fire sighs beside you. The snow deepens overnight, heavy and wet. By morning, the camp feels buried in silence. You push aside the tent flap and see the world drowned in white. The trees sag under the weight, their branches bending like old men. Everything smells of cold and wood smoke. You breathe it in, your chest aching with the chill. You move toward the fire pit and find the embers nearly dead. You coax them back to life with a handful of dry bark. The first flicker of orange feels like relief. Around you, the others stir slowly, their faces pale, lips cracked, eyes sunken. The food is almost gone again. The traps have been empty for days. The river has frozen thick enough to silence its song. Contemporary accounts confirm that starvation was not just a threat but an everyday companion in the high country. Men burned more energy than they could ever replace, hauling gear, cutting wood, walking through endless snow. Their bodies thinned, their minds blurred, and yet they worked on. Hunger became a language of its own, one that all could understand. One of the more peculiar details noted in a few explorers' diaries describes how some trappers carried small leather pouches filled with charcoal powder. They would mix it into boiling water to calm their stomachs or mask the taste of spoiled meat. The idea sounds desperate, but it likely saved lives. Charcoal, though filthy, could soak up poisons and ease sickness. They learned it by watching the forest fires, where animals sometimes ate ashes from burned trees. Researchers remain divided on how effective such practices truly were. Some medical historians claim the charcoal acted as a crude medicine. Others argue it was superstition born of despair. Either way, the gesture of stirring black powder into boiling water feels like defiance against the cold indifference of nature. You sit by the fire, boiling a pot of bone broth, the liquid cloudy and thin. The smell is faint but comforting. The bones click softly as they roll in the bubbling water. You scrape the sides of the pot and sip carefully, tasting saltless warmth and a hint of smoke. It steadies you. Then comes the rot. It starts with a smell sweet, cloying, unmistakable. The last strip of meat has turned bad. You stare at it in disbelief, turning it in your hand. The outer edge is slick, the color wrong. You could risk it. You could cut off the worst parts and cook the rest. But you know the danger. Spoiled meat can bring fever and agony. Some of the men argue quietly, their voices low but urgent. One insists that fire will kill the sickness. Another shakes his head, muttering that even heat has its limits. You all stare at the meat as if waiting for it to decide for you. Finally, you toss it into the fire. It hisses and blackens, releasing a sharp smell that makes your eyes sting. The others turn away, silent. The loss feels like betrayal. Every ounce of food is sacred here, and to burn it feels almost sinful. By nightfall, you feel weaker, your body trembling from the effort of keeping warm. Your stomach clenches, empty but restless. Smoke fills your clothes, your hair, your lungs. You can taste it even when you close your mouth. Someone coughs beside you, a deep, wet sound that rattles the quiet. The sickness has found its way in. You remember the stories of trappers dying not from hunger itself but from the things they ate to avoid it. Rotting meat, frozen fat, mouldy biscuits, dangers disguised as salvation. You chew a strip of leather just to keep your jaw moving, your mind pretending. The bitterness of smoke fills your mouth. The sound of the wind outside grows louder, pressing against the tent walls like an animal trying to get in. You pull your blanket tighter and listen to the fire crackle. The rot still lingers in the air, faint but stubborn. You realize then that survival is not only about what you eat, but what you resist eating. Restraint becomes its own form of strength. As sleep creeps in, you whisper a quiet promise to yourself. You will wake again tomorrow. You will find something clean, something real. The fire pops softly in reply, and the smoke drifts upward, carrying your words into the dark. The next morning dawns pale and still, the air so cold it feels brittle in your lungs. You sit by the fading fire, rubbing warmth back into your fingers. The world has turned quiet again, almost too quiet, and in that silence, your body begins to ache for something beyond food. It wants flavor, warmth, and life. You think of tea, not the kind poured from porcelain cups in a city parlor, but the rough, wild kind made from what the mountain offers. You remember what the indigenous hunters taught you: bark from the pine, needles from the spruce. Even the inner layer of willow could be turned into a drink that wakes the blood. You step out into the snow, knife in hand, searching for the right tree. The forest greets you with silence, but soon you find a stand of tall pines. The air around them smells sharp and green. You scrape a few handfuls of needles, brushing away the frost, and carry them back to camp. Surviving company notes indicate that pine tea became a staple for trappers during long winters when fresh food vanished. It contained what their bodies lacked, though they did not know the science. They only knew that it made them feel stronger, that the dizziness and bleeding gums eased after a few days of drinking it. The brew was their invisible medicine, hidden in plain sight. A curious account in a missionary's letter describes how one group of hunters mixed pine needles with dried berries and snow, calling it their forest wine. The taste was said to be both bitter and sweet, a flavor that settled the nerves and warmed the chest. You imagine the strange satisfaction of it, the relief that something so simple could feel like comfort. Some historians question whether mountain men truly relied on such teas or if later writers romanticized the practice. Others point to consistent mentions in field diaries, suggesting that these rough herbal brews were not only real, but essential. In a landscape stripped of color and warmth, even a cup of green water could become a miracle. You drop the needles into boiling water and watch the steam curl upward. The scent of pine fills the air, sharp yet soothing. You sip carefully. The taste is resinous, almost citrus, with a faint sweetness that lingers on your tongue. It is not pleasant exactly, but it feels alive. You can almost feel the drink waking your limbs, pushing warmth into your fingertips. You share the pot with the others. They drink slowly, eyes half closed, faces softening as the heat spreads through them. For a few moments, the camp feels human again. The sound of the wind fades, replaced by the quiet clinking of tin cups. Later, you brew another pot, this time with a twist of dried bark. The taste grows stronger, darker, almost smoky. You laugh softly at the thought of calling it tea, yet it gives you what you need. You realize that survival is not just about eating, it is about remembering what it means to enjoy something, even for a moment. As the day fades, you sit near the fire with your cup, the liquid catching the glow of the flames. You lift it to your lips and breathe in deeply. The steam rises around your face like a ghost of summer. You can almost imagine the scent of grass, the hum of bees, the sound of running water. When night falls, the snow outside begins again, soft and steady. You pour the last of the tea into your cup and hold it close. The heat seeps into your hands, through the cracks in your skin, into your bones. You think of how strange it is that something as simple as bark and needles can carry hope. You finish the last sip slowly, letting the taste linger. The fire pops, the wind sighs, and the world feels a little less empty. You lie back on your bedroll, eyes heavy, the warmth spreading from your chest outward. In your dreams, the forest is green again, the air sweet with pine, and the cold no longer feels cruel. Night comes without warning. The wind turns sharp again, carrying voices that sound almost human. You sit close to the fire, staring into the flames, and realize the forest feels alive in a different way tonight. The howling starts faintly at first, somewhere beyond the ridge, a mournful song that rises and falls with the gusts. Wolves. You feel their presence before you see them. The hair on your neck prickles as instinct tightens every muscle. The others hear it too. One man looks up from his cup, eyes wide. Another reaches quietly for his rifle. You all know that sound. It is not a single call, but many, blending together in strange harmony. They are hungry, just like you. According to the notes of explorer Osborne Russell, wolves shadowed the camps of mountain men for weeks at a time, drawn by the smell of smoke, hides, and scraps of meat. The animals were both threat and scavenger, ghostly companions of the wild. Sometimes, the trappers shot them for their pelts. Other times, they let them feed on the remains of a kill, unwilling to waste powder. Folklore from that winter whispers of trappers who claimed that wolves would follow them like spirits, watching from the tree line. Some said the animals were messengers of the mountain itself, keeping balance by taking what men left behind. Others believed that if a man ever ate the same meal as a wolf, his soul would grow restless forever. Out here, stories like that cling to you the way smoke does. Some modern researchers doubt how much danger wolves actually pose to humans in these times. They argue the creatures were wary, avoiding direct contact except when desperate. Yet others insist that in the heart of winter, hunger changes every rule. When the land offers nothing, even the cautious must take risks. The line between hunter and hunted grows thin. The howling grows closer now, echoing off the frozen ridges. You toss another branch into the fire, watching sparks climb toward the dark sky. The orange light stretches across the snow, and for a moment, you think you see movement at the edge of the trees, shapes slipping silently between the trunks. You grip your rifle tighter, though you know you will not shoot unless you must. The fire crackles, and you realize how small it is, how fragile the circle of warmth you have built. Beyond it, the world is endless and cold, and everything alive in it is starving. You understand then how easily desperation can turn into madness. The hunger in your stomach feels like something wild scratching to get out. You glance at the others. Their faces are pale, eyes hollow. Someone mutters a prayer under his breath. Another man whispers that the wolves are testing you, waiting for your fire to die. You try to laugh it off, but the sound catches in your throat. You remember reading about a winter where men vanished from their camps, their rifles left untouched, their tracks leading into the forest. Some said they followed the wolves, lured by madness or hunger. Others said the wolves dragged them away in silence. No one ever proved which was true. The howling shifts, spreading out around you like a ring. You can feel the sound in your chest, low and heavy. Your pulse quickens. For a moment, you imagine the wolves as mirrors, reflections of your own hunger and fear moving through the dark. Then, as quickly as it began, the sound fades. The wind stills. The forest exhales. You are left with only the crackle of fire and the rhythmic pounding of your heart. The others slowly relax, lowering their rifles, though no one speaks. You stare into the flames, the shapes dancing across the embers. Hunger has changed the way you see the world. The wolves out there are not just beasts, they are reminders. They live by the same law you do. Take what you can, when you can, and trust only the warmth of your own body. As you settle beside the fire, the silence feels heavier than the noise. You close your eyes and picture their eyes glowing beyond the tree line, patient and bright. Somewhere out there they are watching, Somewhere, they are feasting, and in a strange way, you envy them. You roll onto your side, pull your blanket close, and whisper to the darkness that you'll see tomorrow. The wind sighs one last time through the trees, and the forest returns to stillness. Your body trembles, your stomach growls, and you drift into uneasy sleep, caught between man and beast, both waiting for dawn. Morning breaks with the faintest pink glow, painting the snow in soft light. The night's fear fades slowly, replaced by the same dull hunger that greets you every day. You stir the ashes of the fire and listen to the quiet crack of wood beneath your hands. The others move sluggishly, eyes hollow, bodies wrapped in smoke-stained blankets. The air feels thinner now, and the silence carries a kind of weight. You can feel the fatigue not just in your muscles but in your mind. Days and nights have blended into one long blur of cold and hunger. Sometimes you catch yourself talking aloud when no one is near, just to hear a voice. The others do it too. Around the fire, your small band of survivors keeps one another sane by telling stories. The words fill the spaces that food once did. Records from trappers' journals describe how storytelling became a necessity in the wilderness. Men traded tales the way they traded furs carefully, with pride, sometimes embellishing to make the cold feel smaller. Around dim fires they spoke of cities, of women, of feasts they barely remembered. It was not just entertainment, it was medicine for the soul. One of the strangest stories preserved in a fur trader's diary tells of a man who claimed he once baked bread from ground tree bark. He swore the taste was better than sorrow. No one believed him, but they listened anyway. The laughter that followed was not mockery but gratitude. A good story could fill a camp with warmth more lasting than any stew. There's ongoing debate among historians about whether such tales were rooted in truth or crafted purely for morale. Some argue that these men lived lives too harsh for invention, that every story had a seed of fact. Others suggest exaggeration was their only escape, a small rebellion against the cruelty of silence. Perhaps both are true. Out here, imagination is another kind of survival. You lean back on your elbows and listen as one of your companions begins a familiar story about a feast. He tells it slowly, savoring each word, describing roasted venison dripping with fat, biscuits soft as clouds, rivers of coffee steaming in tin cups. The way he speaks, you can almost taste it. Everyone else closes their eyes and drifts inside the vision. For a few moments, hunger becomes memory, and memory becomes comfort. When it's your turn to speak, you find yourself telling a story you didn't know you remembered. You talk about your first summer in the mountains, when the rivers ran high and full, when trout flashed silver under the sun. You describe the smell of wet grass and the sound of laughter at the trading post. The words come easily. They feel warm on your tongue. The others nod quietly, eyes reflecting the firelight. It doesn't matter if your story is true or not. What matters is that it moves, that it fills the space between breaths. You feel the ache in your stomach fade for a moment, replaced by something gentler. As the night deepens, the stories shift. Some are funny, others dark. There are tales of men who went mad from the cold, who claimed to see figures walking beside them in snowstorms. One man says he once heard voices whispering from the trees, telling him where to find food. Another insists that the mountain itself speaks when the wind blows a certain way. No one argues. In this place, nothing feels impossible anymore. The fire burns low, glowing red at the base. The air inside the camp grows thick with the smell of smoke and breath. You listen to the last story fade, the final words trailing off into the dark. For a long time, no one speaks. The silence that follows is not empty. It feels sacred. You look up at the sky through the break in the pines. The stars shimmer faintly, 1,000 fires burning in a colder heaven. You wonder how many others before you sat like this, hungry and tired, trading words for warmth. You realize that in telling these stories, you are not just surviving, you are preserving something, a shared memory, a fragile echo of what it means to be human. When sleep finally comes, you dream of laughter, of glowing fires, of full bellies and full hearts. The stories wrap around you like a second blanket, thin but powerful. Outside, the wind sighs softly through the trees, carrying your words into the night where they linger, long after your eyes close. Dawn glimmers faintly through a veil of falling snow. You wake to the sound of wind brushing softly across the tent. It feels like another day of nothing, another day of scraping by, until you notice the scent in the air. Faint, wild, and unmistakable. Meat. Someone shouts from beyond the trees, and you rise so quickly you almost stumble over your own boots. You follow the sound to the clearing where one of the men stands grinning through a frost-crusted beard. At his feet lies a deer, its breath still faint, its eyes glazed with shock. The sight steals yours. For a long moment, no one speaks. It is as if the entire world has stopped to honor this miracle. The men look at one another, half laughing, half trembling. You feel tears sting the corners of your eyes before you even realize they're there. According to records from fur company dispatches, deer were rare catches in the deep of winter. Most herds had long since migrated to lower ground, where food still existed. But sometimes, hunger drove one astray, weak or injured, into the mountains. For the trappers who found such a creature, it meant life renewed. An old frontier letter mentions a superstition that to kill a deer in winter was a blessing from the mountain itself, a sign that you had been noticed, not forsaken. Men spoke softly when preparing the meat, careful to waste nothing, offering the first bite to the fire as thanks. You remember that story now and find yourself whispering gratitude into the cold air. Some researchers still argue about how often such luck actually occurred. A few claim that these tales of sudden fortune were exaggerations told later around campfires, symbols of hope rather than fact. But hope, like hunger, has its own truth. And today, standing over this small miracle, it feels real enough. The men work quickly. Knives flash silver in the pale light. Steam rises from the carcass as they clean it. The smell thick and metallic, oddly comforting. You help gather wood for the fire, stacking it high, knowing this day deserves flame and warmth. Soon the air fills with the hiss of fat-meeting heat, the rich scent wrapping around you like a blanket. You sit close to the fire, holding a piece of meat on a stick. It drips slowly, sizzling as it turns brown. The first bite burns your tongue, but you don't care. The flavor explodes, earthy, rich, alive. You chew slowly, reverently, letting the fat coat your lips. For the first time in weeks, your body relaxes. The tremor in your hands fades. The warmth spreads from your stomach outward, heavy and good. The others eat quietly, lost in their own relief. No one rushes. Each bite feels like prayer. Even the smell seems sacred, a reminder of everything worth enduring. After the meal, you hang strips of meat near the fire to dry. The fat crackles as it drips onto the coals, releasing small bursts of smoke that smell faintly sweet. You know this food must last, that tomorrow might not be as kind. Still, you allow yourself a small smile. The mountain, cruel as it can be, has offered mercy. As night falls, the camp glows brighter than usual. The fire dances high, casting golden light on the snow. The deer's bones sit near the edge of the clearing, waiting to be boiled for broth. You watch the flames and feel something returning, a spark of strength, of faith. You think of all the times you've stared into the dark, wondering if survival was just a story you told yourself. Tonight, the story is real. You can taste it. You can feel it in the warmth of your blood. Later, lying in your bedroll, you listen to the quiet breathing of the others. Outside, the wind hums low, soft and almost kind. You imagine the deer as it once was, walking through the trees, unaware of the salvation it carried. You whisper another thank you into the cold and close your eyes. Sleep comes easily this time, heavy and dreamless. For the first night in weeks, your body feels full. Your heart slows to a peaceful rhythm. And somewhere beyond the edge of the firelight, the mountain listens, silent and vast, holding the memory of your small miracle. The air smells faintly of thawing snow. You wake to dripping sounds from the trees, tiny rivulets running down the bark. It feels different today, softer somehow. The storm has passed, leaving behind a quiet warmth you have not felt in weeks. The deer meat from yesterday still hangs drying by the fire, its scent filling the camp like a promise. For the first time in a long while, hope tastes real. You stoke the fire and sit close, rubbing your hands together. The flames reflect in your eyes, and the small pot beside you begins to simmer. Inside is something new, a mix of things gathered from what remains around you. Bones from the deer, snow melted into cloudy water, a few slices of onion you found frozen in a pouch, and a lump of fat left over from the last rendering. You stir it slowly, letting the smell fill your lungs. Historical logs make it clear that mountain men often relied on improvisation to stretch their food supply. They combined bits of meat, melted snow, and whatever herbs or roots they could find to make thick broths. Each pot was different, built from chance and necessity. Some called it mountain stew, others simply the mix. Whatever the name, it was life in a bowl. An odd note from one trader's ledger describes how a man once added snow straight into his cooking pot, saying it made the broth cleaner. Perhaps it was superstition, perhaps practicality. The snow cooled the fire just enough to prevent scorching, and the water it yielded was free, pure, and plentiful. It was one of those strange, small acts that kept a man busy, focused, alive. Researchers still debate whether these improvised stews held much nutritional value. Some claim they were little more than flavored water, while others argue that the marrow, fat, and bones provided enough sustenance to keep strength from fading entirely. Whatever their effectiveness, the ritual of cooking became something more than feeding. It was an act of comfort, of claiming small control over chaos. You dip your spoon into the bubbling mixture and lift it to your lips. The taste surprises you. It is faintly sweet from the onions, heavy with smoke, rich with marrow. You take another sip, then another. The warmth spreads through your body, not just filling your stomach but softening the cold that lives in your bones. The others gather close, their faces eager and tired. You pass the pot around, each man taking a careful sip before handing it on. They hum softly in approval, murmuring words you can barely hear. It feels almost like a ceremony, the firelight flickering against hollow cheeks, the sound of quiet satisfaction breaking the monotony of silence. Later, after everyone has eaten, you scrape the bottom of the pot and lick the spoon clean. Nothing is wasted here. Even the bones go back into the fire to crack and hiss, releasing a faint scent of smoke and life. As evening falls, you find yourself experimenting again. You chop more snow into the pot, drop in a sliver of dried root, and swirl it around. The result is thin but fragrant. You imagine yourself as a kind of alchemist, turning scarcity into warmth. The act of creating, even something small, feels powerful. The fire crackles softly, throwing golden light across the clearing. You lean back and listen to the snow melt from the branches above. Every drop sounds like a heartbeat. You realize that in this vast, indifferent wilderness, you have become part of its rhythm. You take what it gives, you endure what it takes away, and you keep going. The pot bubbles once more, a low, steady song. You ladle out another spoonful and taste the world inside it: earth, smoke, fat, and faint sweetness. It tastes like survival, simple and clean. You laugh quietly, the sound strange after so many days of silence. As darkness falls, you lie back near the fire, full enough to rest. The stars shimmer faintly above, hidden behind a thin veil of cloud. You close your eyes and think of how something so small, a pot, a handful of bones, a pinch of snow, can keep life moving forward. The stew simmers on, gentle and steady, as you drift into a sleep that feels softer than the night before. The snow falls again, though softer now, the flakes wide and slow like drifting feathers. You wake to the quiet sound of it against the canvas above your head. The fire has burned down to a faint glow, a few embers pulsing beneath a thin crust of ash. Your stomach twists before you even sit up. The last of the stew is gone, and the traps have been empty for days. Hunger is no longer a sharp pain, it's a dull ache that hums beneath your skin. You move stiffly, pulling on frozen boots and stepping outside. The cold hits you like a slap. The trees stand black and still against the white. Nothing moves. You try to remember the last time you saw a living animal. The silence answers for you. According to diaries kept by expedition leaders in the early 1800s, there were winters when men vanished into the snow, leaving behind empty tents and scattered gear. Some were found months later, frozen in strange positions, their camps still tidy, as if they had simply lain down to rest. Others were never found at all. In those stories, food always disappeared first, then reason. An old trapper's tale insists that a few camps went beyond the edge of desperation. The story was whispered quietly, never written until years later. It claimed that when supplies were gone, and no game could be found, the living fed on the dead. No one wanted to believe it, but the rumor spread, changing with every retelling. They called them the cannibal camps, though no one could prove they existed. Some historians question if such stories were anything more than ghost tales told to frighten newcomers. Others point to scattered evidence, bones found near abandoned camps, journals cut short mid-sentence, one line hinting at what the writer could not bear to name. Even now, scholars argue in circles. Was it survival or sin? Fact or myth? Maybe it was both. You think of the men who came before you, who faced the same storms, the same unrelenting hunger. Could they have done it? Could you? The thought chills you more than the wind. You want to believe there are limits you would never cross. But out here, the world erases limits one by one. You crouch beside the fire and feed it a few sticks. The flames rise slowly, licking the air. The warmth soothes your hands but does nothing for your stomach. You glance toward the others, sleeping under their blankets. Their faces are gaunt, their breath shallow. You can count ribs even through the layers of wool. The firelight makes their cheeks glow faintly red, the color of life flickering in a sea of pale. For a moment, you remember a story one of them told weeks ago, about his mother's stew, a thick broth with potatoes and onions, ladled steaming from a black pot. The memory comes so vividly that your body reacts before your mind catches up, saliva gathering in your mouth. It feels almost cruel, this ghost of flavor. You shake your head and focus on the fire, trying to chase away the thought. The smell of smoke fills your nose, grounding you. The snow outside glows faintly under the moonlight. You whisper to yourself, words you can barely hear. Tomorrow, there will be food. As the night drags on, you sit awake, staring at the flickering shadows on the canvas walls. Every creak of the wind sounds like a voice. You close your eyes and see faces, men from your party, laughing around the first fires months ago. Their laughter echoes faintly, and you wonder if hunger steals more than strength, if it eats the mind before the body. When morning finally arrives, grey and cold, you are still awake. The others rise slowly, moving like ghosts. You say nothing, and neither do they. The fire hisses softly, the snow outside falling thicker now. There is no talk of the stories, no mention of the darkness whispered in the old diaries. But you can feel it in the air, the knowledge of what hunger can turn a man into, the fragile line that separates need from nightmare. You gather wood and feed the fire again, watching the flames spread through the kindling. The heat steadies you. You tell yourself that as long as you can keep this flame alive, you will not cross that line. You will wait for spring, for thaw, for mercy. You will endure. As the snow buries the world once more, you sit beside the fire and close your eyes. You can almost hear the river beneath the ice, still moving somewhere far below, unseen but alive. You cling to that sound, that small proof that life continues, and let it carry you through the darkness. The days begin to stretch again, though sunlight still feels weak and unsure. The snow no longer falls as fiercely. It drifts lazily, melting on your sleeve instead of freezing there. You can sense it in the air. The long winter is beginning to loosen its grip. The thaw has begun. You rise early and step out into the grey light. The world looks softer now, streaks of brown showing through the white. Patches of earth peek from under melting drifts, and the river, once sealed beneath ice, murmurs faintly again. You stand for a while, just listening. It's the most beautiful sound you've heard in months. According to the journals of early fur traders, the spring thaw was both salvation and danger. It brought food and freedom, but also floods, sickness, and exhaustion. The sudden abundance of water made travel easier but treacherous. Men who had survived the hunger months sometimes lost their lives in the melt, but no one ever complained. The first thaw meant one thing: survival had not been in vain. A curious detail from one trapper's account tells of the first shoots of wild onions sprouting along riverbanks before the snow had even vanished. He wrote of their smell sharp, green, and almost intoxicating after so many months of rot and smoke. The men ate them raw, savouring the sting on their tongues, laughing like children. You can almost taste it now, that bright bite of new life. Some natural historians question if such early growth was even possible at those altitudes, but those who lived it swore it was true. The mountains, they said, always offered a gift to those who endured. You bend to the ground now and search through the damp soil, fingers numb but determined. After a few minutes, you find them slender green shoots poking through the thaw. You pull one free and hold it close, smiling at the smell. Back at camp, the others have stirred. The fire burns higher than it has in weeks. You share what you've found, passing around the small handful of green-like treasure. The taste is sharp, electric, alive. You feel it travel through your body, waking something long asleep. You can see it in the others, too, the faint return of colour to their faces, the spark in their eyes. You boil snow in a pot, drop in the onions, a few scraps of dried meat, and a sliver of fat. The scent that rises is unlike anything you've smelled in months. It smells like spring. You laugh quietly, stirring with a stick, as the steam fogs your face. When you eat, the broth burns your tongue but fills you with warmth that feels different this time. It's not the desperate heat of survival, but the soft, spreading comfort of hope. The air outside hums with dripping water. The trees, dark and glistening, sway gently in the breeze. Somewhere in the distance, you hear the faint cry of a bird, its song awkward and beautiful, as if it too is learning how to live again. Later, you take your traps to the edge of the forest. The snow gives under your boots, water pooling in shallow prints. You set the loops carefully, knowing that soon the animals will return. The world is waking up. By evening, the camp feels different. The fire burns bright and cheerful, the smoke rising into clear air. The sky, for the first time in months, shows streaks of blue. You can smell the thaw everywhere in the damp soil, in the melting ice, in the faint musk of living things returning. The hunger still lives inside you, but it no longer rules you. It has softened into memory. You sit beside the fire, cup in hand, watching steam curl upward. The others talk quietly, voices easy now. Someone hums a tune you haven't heard since the last trading post, a melody that sounds like home. You close your eyes and listen. The snow around the camp glows orange in the firelight. Above, the stars shimmer like spilled salt across the sky. You breathe in the scent of pine and damp earth and feel the mountain shift, almost imperceptibly, from winter to spring. The thaw is not sudden, it is a slow forgiveness, a gentle reminder that even the hardest seasons end. You lean back, hands behind your head, and smile to yourself. The worst is behind you. The ice is breaking. The world is breathing again, and so are you. The air feels different now, warmer against your face and thick with scent. The snow still clings to shaded hollows, but the ground beneath your boots is soft and dark. The first true sunlight of spring stretches across the valley, turning the frozen river into a mirror. It feels like the world is exhaling after months of holding its breath. You stand at the edge of camp and stretch, your joints cracking, your lungs filling with air that no longer hurts to breathe. Hunger has dulled, replaced by an ache that feels almost pleasant. You've grown used to the feeling of being empty, but now, for the first time, you can imagine something else. Records from old rendezvous journals reveal that when the trappers gathered again after surviving a winter, their appetites shocked even the traders. Men who'd lived for months on roots and broth devoured entire slabs of meat, biscuits, and beans in one sitting. They were called iron stomachs, half in admiration, half in disbelief. Those who returned from the mountains alive seemed indestructible, as if the cold had burned away anything weak. An old fur company clerk once wrote that he saw a man eat 12 pounds of buffalo meat in a single day after coming down from the high passes. Another claimed that some trappers drank melted bear grease straight from the pot, grinning through the grease on their chins. You can almost picture the scene: rough faces lit with laughter, plates piled high, the air thick with the smell of cooked fat. Some researchers believe those tales were exaggerations, the stuff of campfire boasting. Others think they were entirely true, pointing out that months of starvation rewired the body. When food finally came, it was not gluttony but instinct, the body demanding what it had lost. Either way, those feasts became legend, the proof that no winter could conquer a man completely. You sit now beside your fire and imagine such a meal. The smell of roasted meat, the sound of grease hissing on hot stones, the way the first bite must have felt heavy, rich, almost overwhelming. You laugh quietly at the thought. You and your companions may not have a feast like that yet, but soon you will. The traps will fill again. The rivers will swell with fish. The earth will give back what it took. You glance around the camp. Everyone moves differently now, slower but lighter, as if a weight has been lifted from their shoulders. One man sharpens his knife, humming under his breath. Another mends his pack, fingers steady again. You catch your reflection in a pool of melted snow, hollow cheeks, tangled beard, eyes brighter than they were a month ago. You look older, harder, but still alive. The sky glows gold as the sun sinks behind the ridge. The smell of smoke mixes with thawing earth, and for a moment you feel something close to peace. You remember how you used to dream of bread, coffee, warmth, all the comforts of the world beyond these peaks. Now, those things feel distant, unnecessary. You have survived on almost nothing, and that knowledge fills you with quiet pride. One of the men jokes about writing his own recipe book one day. 1,000 ways to eat nothing, he says, and everyone laughs. The sound is rough but real. You realize that humor, like hunger, has been a companion all along, one that refuses to die, no matter the cold. Later, as the stars appear, you roast a small piece of meat over the coals. It is all you have, but it tastes like triumph. The fat drips into the fire, spitting and hissing, and the smell wraps around you like memory. The sound reminds you of all the nights you sat here wondering if you would ever eat again. You lean back, watching the sky, your belly warm. The world around you hums with faint life again, the crack of melting ice, the rustle of wind through bare branches, the faint cry of a distant bird. Every sound feels sacred. You whisper to yourself, half a prayer, half a promise. I endured. Tomorrow there will be more food, more warmth, more light. But tonight, this is enough. The mountain, for once, feels gentle. The stars shimmer above you like watchful eyes, and you close yours, full not of food, but of peace. The snow is almost gone now, the last patches clinging stubbornly to the north faces of the rocks. Water runs freely through the gullies, laughing over stones. You walk along a trail that has finally reappeared, the earth soft and black beneath your boots. The air smells of wet bark and thawing pine. Spring has truly arrived, and with it comes the quiet realization that you have lived through something few ever would. Each step feels lighter than the last. The land that once tried to starve you now offers signs of plenty. Birds flash through the trees, calling to one another. A squirrel scampers up a trunk, its fur sleek, its eyes bright. The world that was frozen and silent has awakened. You pause often just to listen to the sound of it. It feels strange, almost too loud after so many months of silence. Eyewitness diaries describe how the first weeks of spring brought not just relief but disbelief. Many trappers wrote that they did not know how to behave when food became easy again. They hoarded supplies even when there was no need, guarding jerky or dried berries as if the cold might return at any moment. Hunger had rewritten their instincts. One traveler's journal mentions a trapper who continued to eat snow with every meal long after the thaw, unable to stop the habit. Another tells of men who would save scraps of bread in their pockets, sleeping with them under their coats. The fear of emptiness lingered long after the stomach was full. You can understand that now. Even as you feel stronger, a part of you still waits for hunger to return. Experts continue to dispute whether the mountain men ever fully escaped that fear. Some argue that it shaped their entire way of life, that even in summer, surrounded by abundance, they prepared for winter as if it could strike at any hour. Others believe that the hardship became a kind of pride, a story they carried like a scar. You can see truth in both ideas. The memory of hunger never leaves completely, it just grows quieter. You stop by the river and kneel to fill your canteen. The water is cold and clear, tasting of stone and melt. The sunlight glints across its surface, scattering gold in every direction. You think of the months when this river was silent under ice, when you dreamed of its sound. Now, it sings again, and you find yourself smiling without meaning to. Back at camp, the others are busy with small repairs. The tents have been mended, the gear repacked. There is talk of moving down toward the trading posts soon, of seeing other faces, of trading pelts for sugar and salt. You listen quietly. The idea of civilization feeling both welcome and distant. After so long in the mountains, the thought of walls and voices feels almost foreign. You look at your hands scarred, rough, strong. These hands have dug through frozen ground, built fires from wet wood, scraped meat from bone, and pulled life from a world that wanted none of it given. You feel an odd tenderness toward them. You realize they have become symbols of everything you have endured. As the sun sets, you sit near the fire, its smoke rising lazily into the cool air. The flames no longer feel desperate, just steady and familiar. You can smell the faint sweetness of the new grass, the damp scent of earth warming beneath you. One of the men tells a story about how mountain men will one day be remembered as giants, as living legends who tamed the wilderness with their bare hands. You laugh softly at that. You know the truth is smaller, humbler. The mountain was never tamed. You simply learn to live with it, to listen instead of fight. Still, you understand how the stories will grow. Time will polish your suffering into myth, your hunger into heroism. People will talk about you as if you were made of iron, when all you ever did was endure. The fire snaps, sending sparks spiraling upward into the night. You watch them fade one by one. Around you, the others are quiet, their faces calm. The mountain stands in its stillness, tall and patient. You feel the strange peace that comes with understanding. The hunger, the cold, the fear. They were never enemies. They were teachers. You lie down, folding your coat beneath your head. The stars are clear tonight, countless and steady. Somewhere below, the river continues its song. You close your eyes and breathe deeply, the scent of pine and smoke filling your chest. Tomorrow, the journey down begins. Tonight, you rest, knowing that the story of this winter will live longer than you ever will. The morning light spreads slow and golden across the valley. The fire from last night has burned down to soft grey ash, its heat faint but lingering. You wake to the sound of water running stronger now, the river unchained from its icy shell. The air carries the scent of pine and damp soil. Everything feels alive again. You stand for a moment, watching steam rise from the melting snow. The trees glitter with droplets that fall like tiny bells when the wind moves through them. Each sound feels new. You stretch, your joints stiff but no longer in pain. Hunger is still there, quiet now, a familiar ghost you can almost smile at. You have lived through the worst of it. Journals from the mountain men often ended not with drama but with reflection. Many wrote that survival had changed them in ways they did not understand. They found peace not in plenty but in simplicity, the taste of clean water, the smell of smoke, the feel of sunlight on the skin. You feel that same quiet revelation now. Life, reduced to its barest shape, has become more vivid than ever. A peculiar story passed down among old trappers tells of one man who, after his final winter in the high country, refused to return to towns. He said the noise of people drowned out the sound of his own thoughts. Instead, he stayed in the hills, living on roots and fish, speaking only to the wind. Perhaps he could no longer bear the comfort he had once longed for. Perhaps he found freedom in the wild silence. You can almost understand him. Opinions differ among writers about what truly drove men like that. Some call it solitude turned to madness. Others say it was wisdom, the understanding that comfort dulls what survival sharpens. You do not know which is right, but as you watch the mist rise over the valley, you suspect truth lives somewhere between. You pack your gear slowly, folding the blankets, tying the straps of your pack. Each item carries memory: the pot blackened with smoke, the knife dulled by frost, the pouch that once held salt. Tools of survival that became extensions of your own body. You touch each one as if saying goodbye. The others move quietly too. No one speaks much. Words feel unnecessary. There is a heaviness in this moment, the kind that comes from knowing you have reached the end of something sacred. The mountain has given back what it took: your strength, your will, your hunger, but in a different form. You will carry it long after you leave this place. You take one last look around the camp. The melted snow glistens in the morning sun. Smoke from the dying fire rises thin and white into the sky. The sound of running water fills the air. It feels like a heartbeat, steady and eternal. You close your eyes and listen, letting it settle into you. As you turn toward the path that leads down the slope, the first warmth of spring touches your face. It feels almost foreign, a gentle hand after months of fists. You smile without meaning to. The world stretches wide before you, no longer a cage, but an invitation. You take your first step. The ground is soft beneath your boots, the smell of earth rich and sweet. Each stride feels like leaving behind a ghost, yet part of you stays here forever, in the smoke, in the river, in the silence that once held you. By the time the sun reaches its peak, the camp is gone behind the bend of the ridge. Ahead lies green valley, open air, the sound of birds. You walk slower now, not from weakness but from reverence. You have learned that life is measured not in plenty, but in the small things that keep the heart beating. A spark of fire, a swallow of broth, the will to rise again when the cold says no. You stop at the edge of the trail and look back one last time. The mountain stands quiet and proud, watching you. You whisper your thanks, not expecting an answer, and then continue down into the light. The story does not end with triumph. It ends with stillness, with breath, with gratitude. The wilderness has taken you apart and given you back to yourself. The wind moves gently through the trees as if carrying your name. You keep walking, step after step, until the snow becomes grass and the silence becomes birdsong. Now, slow your breathing. Feel the world quiet again. Picture yourself standing at the edge of that valley as the sun lowers, the mountain glowing behind you. The air is soft, no longer biting. Each breath feels easy, warm. The long months of cold are far away now, dissolving into memory. You hear the steady rush of the river below, carrying meltwater down through the valleys, feeding the forests, the grass, the life returning everywhere. That sound is constant, calm, eternal. You imagine dipping your hand into it, feeling the coolness slip across your skin. You let the water carry away the heaviness, the hunger, the fear. Only warmth remains. The fire in your camp burns low, casting the faint scent of wood and earth. You sit beside it, listening to the crackle and sigh, the rhythm that has followed you through every season. Above, The first stars begin to appear, shimmering gently in the dusk. The wind is soft now, touching your face like a kind hand. You think of everything you have seen, the frozen rivers, the quiet nights, the small victories that became salvation. You realize that survival is not loud or violent. It is slow, patient, like snow melting drop by drop. It is the strength to stay still, to wait for spring. As the night deepens, your eyelids grow heavy. You lie back, the ground firm beneath you, the stars endless above. The fire fades to embers, glowing faintly through the dark. The world hums around you, peaceful, alive. You have survived the mountain, and it has accepted you. Now let the wind cool your thoughts, let the night hold you gently, and drift into sleep. Sweet dreams.